He ran. Not in slow motion. Not like someone buying time. He ran like a man who had already done the math in his head and come up one number short. His shoes cracked against the wet asphalt. His breath ripped out of his chest in sharp, ragged bursts. Behind him, flashlight beams sliced through the dark like accusations. Stop. Police. He didn't stop. He couldn't. He cut left down a narrow alley, boots splashing through a shallow puddle, shoulders brushing brick as he squeezed through. His heart wasn't pounding out of fear. It was pounding because somewhere deep in the part of him that always stayed cold, he already knew. He had known since the moment the first patrol car turned the corner 2 blocks back. This was it. For the first time in 3 years, this was it. The sirens grew louder. More units joining. The net was tightening from every side. He burst out of the alley onto a wider street, and for 1 second, just one, his legs found more speed. His arms pumped. His jaw clenched. Then the officer hit him from the left. They went down hard, a tangle of limbs and pavement and cold night air. His cheek scraped concrete. A knee pressed into his back. He didn't struggle. He lay there, chest heaving, face turned to the side, staring at the amber glow of a distant streetlight. Handcuffs clicked. A voice above him said, "We got him." He closed his eyes. For years, he had been invisible. But tonight, that ended. If this opening already has you, hit like and subscribe. But this story didn't start here. To understand what happened on that wet street, on that ordinary Tuesday night that suddenly became anything but ordinary, you have to go back. 3 years back. To a quieter time, when nobody was running, and nobody was chasing, and the city didn't yet know what it was living alongside. 3 years earlier, the city was the kind of place that trusted itself. Streets lined with corner stores and coffee shops. Neighborhoods where people waved at each other, where kids rode bikes until the streetlights came on, where the worst thing that usually happened was a car break-in or a noise complaint called in by a neighbor who'd had one too many glasses of wine. It was ordinary in all the ways that people only appreciate after something takes that ordinariness away. His name was Daniel Marsh. And at the time, nobody knew that name. Nobody had reason to. He was 34, medium height, medium build. He worked a logistics job, shift coordinator at a mid-sized distribution center on the edge of the city's industrial quarter. He was punctual. He was polite. His supervisor, a heavy-set man named Greer who ran the warehouse floor like a personal kingdom, would later describe him to investigators as the kind of guy you forget is in the room. That was by design. The first incident happened on a Thursday evening in late October. A woman named Patricia Sauls came home to find her back door unlocked. Nothing was taken. Nothing was visibly disturbed. She mentioned it to her neighbor, who told her she probably forgot to lock it. She convinced herself that was true. A week later, a family 2 streets over noticed items rearranged on their kitchen counter. Small things. A mug shifted to the wrong side. A set of keys not where they had been left. Again, nothing taken. No sign of forced entry. The third call to the non-emergency police line came from an older man named Whitfield Crane, a retired schoolteacher who lived alone and was meticulous about his routines. He told the dispatcher that someone had been inside his home while he was at his weekly Thursday card game. He couldn't prove it, he said. But he knew. He could feel it. The officer who took the report, a 12-year veteran named Detective Carla Osei, wrote it up thoroughly. She was the kind of investigator who wrote everything up thoroughly, even the things that seemed like nothing. Her colleagues teased her about it. She never apologized for it. She stapled the 3 reports together that evening and stared at them at her desk. Nothing taken, she said to herself, out loud, which was a habit her partner Davis had long since stopped commenting on. Nothing taken 3 times. Same general area. No forced entry. Probably kids, Davis said, not looking up from his own paperwork. Probably, she said. But her eyes did not move off the paper. She was unsettled. She couldn't have explained why, not yet. But the feeling stayed with her like a pebble in a shoe, low-grade, persistent, impossible to fully ignore. At first, there was nothing connecting them. Until someone noticed what was missing. Not objects. Not valuables. Time. Every incident happened on a Thursday. Always between 7 and 10 in the evening. Always in homes where the occupants had a known, regular routine that took them away during that exact window. Osei pulled the reports again 6 weeks later when a fourth incident came in, same area, same pattern, same eerie sense of presence without proof. He's watching them first, she told Davis that morning, dropping the reports on his desk with a sound that made him finally look up. That's a stretch, Davis said. Is it? For Holmes. For regular Thursday absences. 0 forced entries. 0 thefts. Somebody is going inside, spending time, and leaving. That's not random. Random people steal things. Random people break windows. This person goes in, exists in someone else's space, and walks back out. That's deliberate. That's practiced. Davis stared at her. That's also disturbing, he said, after a moment. Yes, she agreed. It is. Over the following months, the incidents continued. Not with the frantic pace of someone unraveling. With the measured, patient rhythm of someone refining. The locations shifted slightly, always within a 2-mile radius, but varying enough to make a clear map difficult to draw. The time window tightened. Whoever this person was, they were getting more precise. More confident. No witnesses stepped forward. Not one. No security footage caught anything useful, a shadow on the edge of a frame, a figure in a dark hoodie that could have been anyone. The composite sketch assembled from 2 partial sightings sat on a board in the precinct looking like a face you'd forget immediately after seeing it. Which, Osei suspected, was very much the point. He lives here, she told her supervisor one afternoon, pointing at the radius on the map pinned to her wall. He walks these streets. He knows these routines because he sees them every day. He's not coming in from outside the community. He is the community. Her supervisor looked uncomfortable. You're describing someone's neighbor. Yes, she said. I am. The case grew cold in the official sense, reassigned to a lower priority tier, the active file slid into a drawer while bigger, louder crimes demanded attention. But Osei kept her own copy. She kept adding to it. Small notes in the margins. Dates circled. Patterns annotated in red ink that was starting to bleed through to the next page. Whoever this was, he wasn't just hiding. He was learning. Daniel Marsh's Thursday evenings had a rhythm that would have looked unremarkable to anyone observing from the outside. He finished his shift at 5:30, stopped at the same deli on Crescent Avenue for a coffee he never fully drank, drove home, changed out of his work clothes, and then, depending on the week, either stayed in or left again. When he left, he was gone for 2 to 3 hours. He always returned alone. He cooked dinner after. He watched television. He went to bed before 11. What happened in those 2 to 3 hours was known only to him. He was careful in the way that only someone who has never been caught learns to be careful. Not paranoid, paranoia leaves traces. Paranoid people check their rearview mirrors too often, walk too quickly, look at strangers too directly or not directly enough. Paranoia is legible. Daniel wasn't paranoid. He was simply deliberate. He moved through the world at the exact pace of someone who had nowhere important to be and nothing to hide, which is the most perfect camouflage that exists. He knew his target schedules better than their families did. He knew which neighbor walked their dog at what time. He knew which back fences had loose boards. He knew where the spare keys were hidden, under the ceramic frog, behind the electrical box, beneath the third loose brick of the garden path, because he had stood in those yards in the early afternoon on ordinary weekdays and simply looked. He never took anything. That was important to him. He wasn't there for things. He was there for the feeling. The stillness of another person's home. The particular silence of a kitchen where someone else ate breakfast every morning. The smell of another life. He would stand in the center of a living room and breathe it in, the photos on the wall, the shoes left near the door, the coffee cup half rinsed in the sink, and for those minutes, something in him that was perpetually wound-tight would loosen, just slightly. He understood, on some level, that this was not a thing he could explain. So he never tried. He simply continued. It was a Friday in February, not a Thursday, which was the first deviation from pattern in almost 8 months, when things shifted. The target that evening was a house on Mallory Street. The occupant, a woman named June Farah, was a nurse who worked rotating shifts. Daniel had been watching her schedule for 6 weeks. She was supposed to be working a double that Friday, same as the last 2 Fridays. He had confirmed it by watching her leave at 5:45 with her hospital lanyard around her neck. What he didn't know was that June Farah had asked a colleague to swap shifts. She was home by 7:15. He was inside. He heard the key in the lock from the hallway, and every carefully maintained layer of his composure compressed into a single point of absolute cold. He moved fast, not toward the door, but deeper into the house, slipping into the utility room off the back kitchen, pressing himself against the wall behind the water heater. June dropped her bag on the kitchen table. He heard it. He heard her fill a glass of water. He heard her kick off her shoes. He heard her say, to no one, or to a cat he hadn't known existed, "Long day, baby. Long day." He stood in the dark, barely breathing. For the first time in years, something hadn't gone according to plan. Daniel Marsh. She called the police. The officer who came was young and thorough and took the card into evidence with careful gloves. He filed the report, flagged it for follow-up, and within 48 hours it had crossed the desk of Detective Carla Osei, who had not worked the case actively in over a year, but whose name was still on the file as primary, because she had never formally closed it. She held the evidence bag up to her office light and looked at the name. Then she opened her desk drawer and pulled out her annotated copy of the case file, the one with the red ink bleeding through to the next page. She started at the beginning. It took her and Davis 3 days. They cross-referenced Daniel Marsh against every address in the incident reports. He didn't live near most of them, but he worked near all of them. The distribution center's shift schedule showed Thursday evenings off, going back nearly 3 years. His transit card showed boarding locations consistent with the target neighborhoods on the nights in question. He had no criminal record. No prior contact with police. Nothing that would have flagged him in any routine check. Ordinary, Davis said, on the third evening, leaning back in his chair and staring at the board. That was the point, Osei said. They built the case quietly. No announcement. No press. Osei was careful. Years of watching people disappear because someone talked too much had made her meticulous about information control. They put surveillance on Daniel Marsh. Discreet. Patient. It took 2 more weeks. On a Tuesday evening, again, not Thursday, which Osei noted with grim interest, because his pattern was shifting, which meant something in him had shifted, Daniel Marsh left his apartment at 7:45 and walked 12 blocks to a residential street on the east side. The surveillance team followed at a distance. He stopped in front of a house. Stood on the pavement looking at it the way someone looks at a painting they've studied before. The unit on standby got the call. When the first patrol car turned the corner, Daniel Marsh saw the headlights. And he knew. He ran. Back to wet asphalt. Back to flashlight beams and sirens and the particular mathematics of a chase that only ends one way. The alleys. The splashing. The burst of speed that lasted half a block before the officer hit him from the left. The pavement. The handcuffs. The streetlight, amber, seen from the side of his face. We got him. At the precinct, Daniel Marsh sat across from Osei in an interview room that smelled of bad coffee and old air. He had a cut on his cheek from the pavement. He was calm in a way that Osei found more unsettling than panic would have been. She put the case file on the table between them. The red ink copy. Months of notes. Years of Thursdays. You want to tell me about this? She said. Daniel looked at the file for a long time. Then he looked up at her. I never hurt anyone, he said. I know, she said. I just wanted to be somewhere else. She looked at him, at the completely ordinary face, the medium build, the man that Greer the warehouse supervisor forgot was in the room. She thought about Patricia Saul's convincing herself she had forgotten to lock her door. Whitfield Crane, who knew someone had been in his home but couldn't prove it. June Farah, frozen in her utility room holding a transit card. Someone else is somewhere else, Osei said. That's not yours to take. He had nothing to say to that. He looked back down at the table. She closed the file. The charges were filed the following week. Unlawful entry, criminal trespass, 11 counts confirmed across the 3-year span of documented incidents, with investigators believing the actual number was considerably higher. The transit card evidence anchored the prosecution. The case history Osei had built in the margins of a file that was supposed to be cold built the rest. He didn't fight it in court. His public defender told him he had limited options, given the evidence. He looked at the options for 3 days and then entered a guilty plea. At sentencing, the judge asked him if he had anything to say. Daniel Marsh looked at the courtroom, at Osei sitting in the gallery, at the victim's coordinator, at the flags flanking the bench, and said, in a voice that was very quiet and very even, I'm sorry for what I took from people. Even the things I didn't take. The judge looked at him for a moment. Then she sentenced him. Outside the courthouse, Davis found Osei on the steps, standing in weak winter sunlight with her hands in her coat pockets. 3 years, he said, not really asking. 3 years, she said. And 1 transit card. You kept that file open. I kept that file open. Davis was quiet for a second. Then, you were right about the pebble in the shoe. She looked at him. You once told me it felt like a pebble in a shoe. Some cases. Some cases, she said. She walked down the steps toward the parking lot, and Davis fell in beside her, and the winter light held them both for a moment before the city swallowed them back up. He had controlled everything for years, the timing, the locations, the exits, the evidence, the feeling of being somewhere he had no right to be and leaving without a trace. Until one night, in a dark utility room, pressed against a wall behind a water heater, with a cat staring at him and a nurse calling from the other room, he didn't. 1 small card. His name in faded black type. 3 years of Thursdays, undone. That's all it takes. 1 mistake. 1 moment where the thing you forgot to account for is so small you almost can't believe it, and yet so final you can't escape it. He almost got away with it. Almost. If this story kept you watching all the way to the end, drop a comment below with what you think really drove him to do it. Subscribe for more stories built to keep you locked in from the first second to the last. Like, comment, subscribe, see you in the next one.